talk to you today about that messy person in your life, and it might actually be you. So I wanted to talk about some of the characteristics you might see. It might be the person who leaves washing, like dirty or even clean linen all over the floor. They tend to be attracted to spend time playing computer games or working on a device or a computer rather than doing the chores. If it's you, you might find that you don't feel motivated to do the housework, but you are very motivated to do things for other people, for the community, creative pursuits, sports, that sort of thing. But when it comes to chores at home, you're just not interested. Some people might find that if it's you, other people talk about you being messy. Other people get frustrated with you. People who you're living with, they feel that you're not carrying your weight. They feel like you're not contributing to the extent that they would like you to be. And you might have complaints, for example, that you never close cupboard doors, for example. So things that don't bother you bother other people. Or if it's somebody you live with, you might be seeing those things so that it is somebody who, it bothers you to see cupboard doors open. You like things to be clean and tidy. Just using the cupboard doors as an example. But the other person you live with, really, it doesn't bother them at all. And you might have approached them and said, doesn't it look nicer when the cupboard doors are closed, or doesn't it look nicer when the bed's pulled straight? And they will say, quite honestly, no, it doesn't bother me. I could take it or leave it. And so these sort of indications, they are typical when a person has an impaired executive function. And there's a wonderful professor by the name of Russell Barkley who's written extensively about this topic. So I don't want to go on and on and on about the problem or that these people are a problem. We are all wired differently. We've all come from different backgrounds. We have different experience. Now, percentage-wise, about 13 or 14% of American teenagers exhibit these impaired executive functions, and 1% of adults, but picking it up once people are in adulthood can be a challenge. And also it can resolve itself a bit during adulthood. So the numbers for adults are a bit sketchy. But honestly, if you recognise some of those traits in yourself or another person, then you might find this topic very, very helpful. So when you have trouble with executive functioning, you might have impaired self-awareness, and so this is where that other people might be irritated, that you're not as tidy as you could be. You just don't have an awareness of that. It's a bit like the people who will talk on and on when the other person isn't interested, that they don't have an awareness, or they might have an awareness but it doesn't influence their response to that. It might be, a lack of self-awareness around just the untidiness, the messiness, that it never struck you that it was a problem. And it's only a problem if it causes problems of functionality. So if it starts to make it difficult to do your daily chore, to just to live life in general, and to get along with the people who you live with, then it could be classified as a problem, I suppose. Inhibition. And so how this plays out is that tendency to go towards the electronic devices or something that's very active and very stimulating rather than the chores, which would be seen as being boring. So you know that you're supposed to be doing the chores, but you'll still go to this other activity that is more stimulating. And that ties in with attentional management, so choosing where you put your attention. And verbal self-instruction or working memory can come into play. So if that is impaired, it means that you can't hold that vision, that long-term vision of this, like, for example, you might have a vision of how your living room looks when it's tidy, and you can work towards that, and that helps to motivate. But if that verbal self-instruction or working memory is impaired, you don't have the benefit of being able to hold that vision and work towards it. Non-verbal working memory or visual imagery, so again, visualizing that image. Verbal self-instruction that I was just touching on goes back to you know where you want to go, and you might talk to yourself as you're going, and often we'll do this almost unconsciously. That we'll just talk ourselves through a process, and you'll think, okay, well, I want to get this done, so first I'll do that. It might be, okay, well, I want to dust, so first I'll clean the fireplace so that any dust from the fireplace can then be cleaned up when I vacuum, followed by dusting, something like that. So you talk your way through the process and plan and review it as you go. Non-verbal work, yes, so visual imagery, problem solving. So even being able to navigate your way around issues or problems can be difficult. And this all ties in with self-motivation, which again, you might be speaking to yourself and saying to yourself, look, when the house is all tidy and everything's where it is, we can sit down and enjoy a movie, or we can go out and enjoy a movie, or sit down and have a cuppa or something like that. And so in a household where maybe one of the parents is experiencing this impaired executive function, or there are teenagers or young children, although you're going to become more and more aware of it after the child is maybe 6 years of age. One of the important things is not to cast judgment, not to see it as willful problem making, willful naughtiness. Don't see it as a partner who's choosing not to chip in and contribute to the chores in the household. It's important to actually start to see it as, this is the way they are and I can't change it. Now, there are some cases where you can get treatment for it, and again, I point you to this Professor Russell Barkley, and you'll find plenty of information there. But what tends to be most helpful is to approach the situation with curiosity. Okay, so what's going on for them that it happens this way? And oftentimes just accepting that that's the way they operate. But if we can understand a bit of what's going on internally, maybe we can bring about more desirable results in our environment. So, for example, the teenager who throws their clothes on the floor, it might be that they actually need, because there's all these things they can't actually do in their own brain as well as others, they might need some external visual cues. So it might be that they have a laundry hamper right next to the bedroom door, so that as they're leaving, they see, oh, yes, must put my clothes in the hamper. Or maybe better still, put it where they'll see it as they walk in. Because if they're walking out, they are on a mission to go and do something else. The reason why people who exhibit these behaviours are often drawn to electronics is that it gives them a stimulation that their own brain is not providing. So there can be diminished dopamine availability in the brain, and this means that where we can stay stimulated and active and on track to reach a goal, people who exhibit these behaviours might not have the benefit of that, because the transmission in their brain of messengers is not happening the way it does for others. And so giving them outward cues, so that this is the thing, is they'll be drawn to electronics, whether that's for work or for play, because it gives them stimulation and it brings their brain closer to what we would call a neurotypical operation. Now, I'm not a professor. This is just my own research and what I've just been learning in my own life with my own household. So again, I'll point you to the research. But a lot of it is to do with externalizing. So one of your challenges is that this person might not feel motivated, and so it can be valuable to give consequences. I really want to jump in here because there is a point that I don't want to miss, and that is one of the most valuable things you can do is work alongside the person, whether it's your spouse or a child. It's likely that they are going to feel overwhelmed because they can't see the big picture of what needs to be done and break it down into steps. If they're experiencing this impaired executive function, this is one of the challenges for them. And so just recognising that and trying to find ways to build in a win-win situation to set them up for success rather than setting them up for failure by expecting things that they can't actually do. So, for example, being prepared to work alongside these people is very beneficial. So you might find that as a household you actually need to schedule in time. It's nice to have a rest and put your feet up after dinner time when your tummy's full and your body's processing the food. But maybe an hour after dinner time is a good time to say, okay, now let's spend half an hour doing this chore, and after that we can share an ice cream, share a treat of some kind, or sit down and watch a program that's enjoyed, etc. So I want to go back to what I was speaking about because I don't want to miss that entirely. Having external cues. So for children it might mean having a routine chart so that in the morning they can actually have a card that they can take off the chart and carry with them until they've done what it is that they need to do, and then they can put that back on the chart. People who exhibit these challenges also can struggle with a sense of time, and so that you might have a 1 hour window where you're getting ready to go out the door to school, but they don't have a sense of time, and so they will stop, and if it's a child they might play, or if it's an adult they might get distracted by something on their iPad and start doing work that's going to take half an hour when actually no, we need to be getting ready for school. So there are strategies that you can employ to work with these. The real take home though is that these people are not willfully defiant. They're not willfully lazy. They're not willfully naughty. And so if we're going to introduce consequences, it's best if they're not punitive consequences. I mean, some people might, it might be a child who tends to be naughty, although in my opinion there's always a reason for that. They're meeting a need. It might be that they just need more attention. But yes, so externalizing the little prompts to motivate. So it might be that there's a little poster in the kitchen reminding people as they come into the kitchen that they could be emptying the dishwasher and putting dishes away, or that they could be putting dinner on the stove to get it started. Or it might mean, as I said before, the laundry hamper is in a visible space near where the clothes are so that they can be put into the hamper. Using the consequences, so finding a reward system that doesn't become unhealthy. If you give sweets every time somebody does the right thing, then you might have a dental bill before too long. But there are a lot of different ways you can reward, and that's something you can look up on the internet easily. It might be as simple as allowing a child to have a 10-minute video show, or a bit of time directly with mum and dad, might be doing a craft or something like that. The other thing is that when we're talking about children and homework, we really need to break down that homework into small steps for them, and similarly for family. So at one stage I had a partner who had some issues around these impairments, exhibited these impairments. And I was always trying to find ways to motivate them to think about the big picture, to think about the future and to plan ahead, not realising that they had these impairments. And so one exercise I tried to do with them was to say, okay, where do we want to be in 1 year? Where do we want to be in 5 years? Where do we want to be in 10 years? And that can be very, very challenging because it's a brainstorming process, and you might throw in an idea, but it can be really hard for them to hold those ideas and not analyse them straight away. And so they might feel that they need to analyse those straight away. The other thing is that you are presenting a timeline. And so that requires them to think about, what are all the things that could go on in my life between now and 5 years from now? How might that affect me? How might that affect my budget? How is my household going to look? Will we have enough bedrooms? All these thoughts and ideas that the rest of us might have flooding in. And the other person might sit there and feel that they don't have anything to contribute. Oftentimes they can become anxious very easily, which makes it even harder for them to express themselves and to contribute themselves. So I just wanted to put these thoughts on the table, because if you or somebody else is living with these impairments, it's of great value to put everything you can in place to increase success, basically. Because when you feel that you're doing well, when you feel that you're achieving, your self-esteem goes up, and it can make you feel more motivated. But if your self-esteem is up, that has a lot of knock-on effects. If our self-esteem is low, then that can promote things like anxiety and depression and fear and that sort of thing. So I really thought that this was a very important topic to touch on. I will try to look more into this and what sort of things we can put in place to support ourselves and to support other people. Now, the other thing I want to put as an end note is, if you have just had a baby, or say you have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, and your wife isn't keeping up with the housework, it doesn't mean she has impaired executive functioning. We have life changes and we have seasons where there is a lot more going on for us, and maintaining systems and maintaining the tidiness in a house is going to be very challenging. At those times, you can either bring in more resources, and it's very important who you choose to help if you're going to get helpers in, or you can just lower your standards. So there are plenty of households out there where really the baby's clothes, they get washed so frequently that they go into the linen basket, they get washed, they go into a clean basket, and mum just sorts through them there to grab what she wants when she wants, rather than spending the time folding, only to have them taken out within 2 or 3 hours of folding. So that's a couple of things that you can think about. But there are times in our life when our systems get away from us. So don't assume that every time you're seeing that you or someone else is dealing with impaired executive functioning. But I did want to put this on your radar. I really hope that this video has blessed you. Have a great day. I'm based in Tasmania, Australia, and I'm available for consultations locally. I can also meet with you online for support with your organisational challenges. If this video blessed you, be sure to share, like and subscribe, and consider sharing with a friend.